Thursday dinner at the Caldwell family's Charleston home had once been a warm ritual, but lately, it felt like a boardroom interrogation. Every week, I sat in the same creaky oak chair I'd occupied since I was a teenager, listening to my family pick apart my life like they were conducting an audit. So, my sister Victoria began, slicing into her lemon chicken with meticulous care. I heard you turned down another job offer this week. I should have known this would come up. In the Caldwell family, everyone's business was public property. Privacy wasn't a right, it was a rumor. It wasn't the right fit, I said, taking a slow sip of iced tea, hoping the conversation would move somewhere less personal. The right fit, my brother Daniel echoed, his laugh sharp as glass. Lauren, you've turned down 5 offers in the past 3 months. At what point, he continued, do you stop chasing the perfect unicorn job and face reality? Maybe when the offers are worth accepting, I replied evenly, despite the heat rising in my chest. My father set his fork down with a loud clank, the sound bouncing off the antique china cabinet. Worth accepting? Lauren, you're 32. You rent a 1-bedroom apartment over a coffee shop. You drive a 12-year-old Civic with a dent in the door. What exactly are you holding out for? Something that aligns with my values, I said quietly. The table erupted in cold, brittle laughter. Your values? Victoria smirked. The value of being unemployed? I'm not unemployed, I freelance. You write copy for dog treat companies? Daniel cut in. That's not a career, that's a side gig for college kids. Mom, who had stayed silent, finally spoke. Her tone was calm, but carried the weight of judgment. Lauren, we've been patient. We've defended your choices to our friends, our neighbors, our colleagues. I never asked you to defend me, I said. No, you didn't, Dad replied, but we did it anyway. Because that's what family does. I kept my eyes on my plate, my grip tightening on the fork, determined not to give them the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. We protect each other, even when one of us makes choices that reflect poorly on the rest of us. Dad's words hung in the air like smoke, acrid, suffocating. But our patience has limits, Mom continued. Her voice was steady, but her eyes carried the weight of something final. And frankly, we're tired of being embarrassed by you. A cold knot formed in my stomach. This wasn't the usual round of criticism. This felt decisive. What are you saying? I asked, though part of me dreaded the answer. Victoria and Daniel exchanged a glance, the kind you give someone when you've rehearsed the lines ahead of time. This wasn't an off-the-cuff family intervention. This was a planned execution. We're saying we can't keep associating with someone who refuses to live up to their potential, Victoria said smoothly. It's hurting our reputations, our business relationships, our social circles. Your social standing? My voice carried more disbelief than I intended. Yes, Daniel said sharply. Do you know how humiliating it is to tell people my sister is a 32-year-old freelance copywriter? That doesn't exactly help me land new investment clients. And I'm up for senior partner at my law firm, Victoria added. Having a sister who lives like a grad student doesn't exactly project stability. I stared at the people I'd shared decades of holidays, birthdays, and quiet Sunday mornings with, people now looking at me like I was a flaw in the family portrait. So what, I asked, you want me to take any job, no matter how soul-crushing, just so you can feel less awkward at charity galas? We want you to grow up, Dad said flatly, to stop pretending your principles outweigh your responsibilities. What responsibilities? I shot back. I pay my own rent, my own bills. I don't ask you for anything. You owe us the courtesy of not embarrassing us, Mom said coldly. At least try to look successful. I am successful, I said, my voice rising despite myself. I do work that matters. Sustainable living, ethical consumerism, social justice. Topics that don't pay the bills, Victoria cut in. The silence after that was deafening. Stability isn't everything, Mom repeated slowly, like she was tasting something bitter. Lauren, Dad said, his voice dangerously quiet. Your mother and I have spent our entire lives building stability for this family. We've sacrificed, we've saved, we've planned. And you're telling us that none of it matters? That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said, Victoria cut in. You're dismissing everything we've built, everything we value. Because you value the wrong things, I blurted, and regretted it instantly. The explosion was immediate. The wrong things? Dad roared, shoving back his chair so hard it toppled. We value hard work, responsibility, contributing to society, building something that lasts. What's wrong with that? You care more about appearances than authenticity, I shot back, standing now too. You're more worried about what strangers think than what actually matters. And what actually matters to you? Mom's voice was cold enough to frost glass. Because from here, it looks like nothing matters. Not your family, not your future, not your responsibilities. That's not true, I said, but even to my own ears it sounded thin. Isn't it? Daniel leaned back, arms crossed. When was the last time you came to one of my investment client events? When did you ever help Victoria network at her firm's charity galas? When was the last time you did anything to lift this family up instead of dragging it down? I opened my mouth, then shut it, not because they were right, but because I'd stopped being invited years ago. We've given you every advantage, Mom said, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for her wine. Every connection, every recommendation, every chance to prove yourself as the daughter we raised. And you've wasted every one, Victoria added. They weren't opportunities, I said desperately. They were traps, ways to make me into someone I'm not, someone who'd hate her own life. Dad's laugh was short and bitter. You think a stable job, a nice home, and respect would make you miserable? Do you know what actually makes people miserable, Lauren? Poverty, instability, watching your own family be ashamed of you. The words hit harder than I expected. You're ashamed of me, I said quietly. If you want to know what I told them next, and why it left the whole table in stunned silence, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next part. It wasn't a question. The silence between us was thick with 3 decades of disappointment and unmet expectations. Finally, Mom spoke. You're officially dead to this family, she said, her tone calm, almost casual, like she was remarking on the weather. She picked up her fork and cut into her lemon chicken, as if she hadn't just severed me from my own bloodline. Around the table, heads nodded, conversation resumed. Victoria asked Daniel about his latest investment trip. Dad commented on the Cabernet. Mom complimented herself on the seasoning. They laughed, they planned, they excluded me entirely, as if I'd already vanished from existence. I stared down at my plate, my mind blank, until muscle memory made me check my phone. I expected nothing, maybe a spam email or a grocery store coupon. Instead, a notification lit up my screen. Congratulations! Your article, The Hidden Environmental Cost of Fast Fashion, has been selected as a finalist for the National Environmental Journalism Award. The winner will be announced at tomorrow's ceremony. Please confirm your attendance. I read it 3 times, making sure my eyes weren't playing tricks on me. The National Environmental Journalism Award, a $50,000 grant, guaranteed features in top-tier publications. 6 months ago, I'd submitted that piece, the one I'd spent 3 months chasing across continents, speaking with cotton farmers, factory workers, corporate executives, and environmental scientists. It was work that mattered, work my family mocked as unpaid blogging. I slid my phone back into my purse without saying a word. Let them keep eating. Let them believe they'd cut off the family embarrassment. Tomorrow, they'd find out exactly what and who they'd just dismissed. The rest of dinner blurred into meaningless chatter. No one said goodbye when I left. No one walked me to the door. Back in my tiny apartment above the coffee shop, I spent the night pulling outfit options for a ceremony I'd never dared to imagine attending. The next morning, I slipped into my best dress, a simple black sheath I'd once worn to job interviews, and took an Uber to the Charleston Grand Hotel. When I stepped into the main ballroom, I froze. Hundreds of journalists, editors, and industry leaders filled the space. The air buzzed with ambition and achievement. I spotted faces I knew from television segments, names I'd seen in glossy magazine bylines, reporters whose work had inspired me for years. And now, somehow, I was here among them. The ceremony began with tributes to the year's most impactful environmental reporting. I sat toward the back, palms damp, heart thudding as each award was announced. Finally, they reached my category. The award for Outstanding Environmental Investigation goes to, the presenter slid the envelope open with theatrical precision, Lauren Caldwell for her article, The Hidden Environmental Cost of Fast Fashion. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Applause swelled around me as I walked to the stage on legs that didn't quite feel like mine. The award, a striking crystal structure, was heavier than I expected, scattering rainbows across the podium lights. Mrs. Caldwell, the presenter smiled, would you like to say a few words? I looked out at a sea of accomplished professionals, all applauding my work, and felt something shift deep inside. Thank you, I began, my voice steadier than I'd imagined. This represents 3 months of research, dozens of interviews, and countless hours of writing. But more than that, it represents the power of journalism to uncover truths that those in power would rather keep hidden. The applause intensified, and I began this investigation. I was told fashion journalism wasn't serious, that environmental reporting didn't matter, that I was wasting my time. But sometimes the work that matters most is the work people don't understand, until it changes something. By the end of the night, I'd spoken with editors from 3 major publications, 2 documentary filmmakers, and a literary agent eager to discuss a book deal. My phone was buzzing before I even left the ballroom. Back at my apartment, I set the award on the counter. Messages from colleagues poured in, interview requests stacked up, and then the family texts began. Victoria at 7:30 p.m. saw the news. Impressive. Daniel at 8:15 p.m. Mom mentioned the award. Cool stuff. Mom, at 9:45 p.m. we need to talk. Call me. Dad, at 10:20 p.m. saw your name in the paper. Let's discuss. I answered none of them. The next morning, a knock rattled my door. I opened it to find my entire family crowded in the hallway, looking uncharacteristically awkward. Lauren, Mom began carefully, we think there may have been a misunderstanding yesterday. A misunderstanding? I repeated, my voice flat. We had no idea you were working on such important projects, Victoria said quickly. If you'd known, you would have. What? I asked. Treated me differently? Respected my choices? Not declared me dead to the family? Dad cleared his throat. We may have been hasty in our judgment. Hasty, I said. That's one way to put it. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. This award, it's a big deal, isn't it? It's the most prestigious award in environmental journalism, I said matter-of-factly. And the prize money? Mom asked carefully. $50,000, I confirmed, plus guaranteed publication in major outlets. The silence stretched as they processed that. Lauren, Dad said finally, we owe you an apology. Do you? I asked. Because yesterday you told me my work didn't matter, that my values were wrong, that I was an embarrassment. We didn't understand, Victoria began. You didn't try to understand, I cut in. For years you dismissed my work without once asking what I actually do, what my goals are, what I'm trying to accomplish. You wrote about dog food, Daniel said weakly. An article, I corrected, about sustainable pet food manufacturing, out of hundreds. But that's the only one you remember because it fits the narrative you built about me. Mom stepped forward. We want to make this right. How? I asked. How do you fix years of treating me like a failure? Years of choosing your reputation over my happiness? We could celebrate, Victoria suggested. Have a family dinner to honor your achievement? I almost laughed. You want to throw me a party now? Now that my work's been validated by people you think matter? Lauren, please, Dad said, his voice tinged with something I'd never heard before. Desperation. We made a mistake. We judged you unfairly. We want to fix this. I looked at them, people who had made me feel small for so long. Here's what's going to happen, I said finally. I'll keep doing the work I believe in. If you can respect that, even when you don't understand it, then we can rebuild. If not, this conversation ends here. Of course, Mom said quickly. We want to support you. But if you ever go back to treating me like a disappointment, the moment the spotlight shifts, if you decide my work only matters when others praise it, then we're done. Permanently." They all nodded quickly, promising to listen more, to respect my choices, but I could see it in their eyes, the calculation, the subtle shift as they figured out how to use my success to their advantage. In the weeks that followed, they began weaving themselves into my recognition. Victoria mentioned my award to her law firm partners. Daniel brought it up with his investment clients. Mom and Dad bragged to their neighbors about their award-winning journalist's daughter. But they still didn't read my articles. They didn't ask about my next project. They only cared about the prestige, not the work itself. 3 months later, when the media buzz quieted and I was back to my steady freelance routine, their enthusiasm waned. Victoria stopped mentioning me at work. Daniel returned to his old jokes about my blogging career at family dinners. Mom and Dad resumed suggesting more stable career paths, now adding, "Of course, we're very proud of your award," as though that softened the sting. It hit me then, nothing had truly changed. They hadn't learned to value me. They'd only learned that my recognition could sometimes make them look good. So I made a decision. Using the connections I'd gained from the award, I secured a staff position at Verdant Weekly, a leading environmental magazine. It came with a strong salary, benefits, and the chance to work on investigations that could truly make a difference. Best of all, the magazine was based in Portland, Oregon, over 3,000 miles from Charleston, and the suffocating rhythm of Thursday dinners, where my worth was measured by others' approval. I didn't tell my family until after I'd moved. "You moved across the country without discussing it with us." Mom's voice was sharp with hurt. "I'm 32, I reminded her. "I don't need permission." "But what about family dinner?" Victoria asked. "We can still stay connected," I said, "but on my terms. I'm done defending my life to people who only support me when it benefits them." The conversations that followed were messy, full of old resentments, sharp words, and moments when I nearly hung up. But distance gave us something years of Thursday dinners never had: perspective. Without constant judgment hanging over us, we began to talk about things beyond my career and their disapproval. Victoria called after reading my piece on corporate environmental responsibility. "I had no idea companies were doing this," she admitted. "It's important work." Daniel texted me after my investigation into sustainable investing. "My clients are asking about this. Can we talk?" Even Mom and Dad started reading my articles, not to brag, but because they were curious. 2 years later, when I won a Pulitzer for exposing corruption inside the EPA, their response was different. They didn't rush to leverage it for social standing. They called simply to say, "We're proud of you. Your work matters." And for the first time, I believed them. The tiny apartment they mocked was now a light-fill Pearl District condo. The dented Civic was replaced by a hybrid I loved. My once-dismissed career had become both stable and meaningful. Sometimes you have to be pushed away from the table to finally find your seat in life. Here's my advice. Never let someone else's limited vision define your worth. Set boundaries. Chase the work that lights you up, even if others don't understand. Sometimes distance is the bridge that brings real connection, and sometimes rejection is the gift that frees you to become who you're meant to be.